And the one thing that I say with this book is this is not a book just for girls. It's about girls, but I want boys to read this as well, because if we are going to change the mindset, you want boys to read this and go, oh, your one's pretty cool too, isn't she?
Hello and welcome to the Southern Star's Coronavirus podcast. I'm the news editor, Siobhan Cronin, and this week's interview is with Ballinhassing woman and sports broadcaster RTE's Jacqui Hurley. Jacqui has just published her first book aimed at children, and it teaches them about the importance of equality in sport. It's called Girls Play Too, and she recently spoke to Emma Connolly about writing, family life, and her passion for all things sporty.
My guest on this week's Southern Star podcast is RTE broadcaster and Ballinhassing native Jacqui Hurley. Hello Jacqui, good to see you. I've been looking forward to our catch-up. Of course, what I should have said in my introduction there is that you are also now a published author. You've written a book. Congratulations.
Thanks a million.
Tell me all about it.
Well, it's called Girls Play Too, and basically it's something that I'd wanted to do for ages. It was one of those things that was in my head that I really felt like if I didn't do it, I'd be really disappointed with myself. And I think with everything that's going on right now with the women in sport movement and 20 by 20 this year being such an important year, it just felt like the right time to do something. And the reason why I did a children's book rather than an adult's book is because for me, it kind of felt like they're the generation that we need to talk to. If we're going to make real change, it felt like they're the ones who are going to do it.
And what format is the book? Is it fiction? Is it fact? Is it a mix?
So it's the fairy tale stories of 25 of Ireland's best known sportswomen. So it's basically like, let's say if you were to take Katie Taylor as an example, it's once there was a girl called Katie who dreamed of being an Olympic champion. And then with each of them, I interviewed the 25 athletes and I asked them all to give me a kind of a story from their childhood that helped them make the breakthrough. So for Derval O'Rourke, she was racing against this little boy in her estate and he kept saying to her, I'm faster than the girls. And she took him on and she ran so fast that she couldn't stop herself and she ran into a concrete wall. And he was older than her and she didn't even care that she cut her legs. It was just that was the sense that she knew, even though she was a girl, she could run fast. And I think that was kind of the message, that I just wanted the athletes themselves to share a story that kids could relate to. So it's kind of aimed at like 8 to 12-year-olds, but I think the upper limit is probably about 14. And the one thing that I say with this book is this is not a book just for girls. It's about girls, but I want boys to read this as well, because if we are going to change the mindset, you want boys to read this and go, oh, your one's pretty cool too, isn't she?
We actually chatted it a few weeks back, and then you told me it was the kind of book you wished you had access to when you were growing up, when you were playing sports.
Yeah, I would have loved a book like this. And I think, don't they say even when people invent apps, you always invent something that you want? And the book that I wrote, even when I was writing it, I was loving reading it. And I would have loved, like Sonia O'Sullivan was my hero when I was a kid. Like, when we're from Cork, you have role models all around you. There's so many amazing athletes. But Sonia to me felt like, how did a girl from Cove become a world champion? And she was in newspapers and she was on the TV, but she felt to me like she was the only one. Whereas now I think for little girls, they're looking around and they're seeing like, Katie Taylor, Ciara McGeehan, Denise O'Sullivan, Stephanie Roach. Like there are so many female role models for them. And I just wanted them to be able to read a little bit more about them. Like, I don't think it has to be groundbreaking. I think it just needs to be small little things that help to show them that if they want to be that, they can just learn these little nuggets about them and they might be helpful to them.
Totally. So, in your experience, do you think girls are, that it's changing for girls, that they're not, making that decision, oh, it's my leaving cert year, I'm going to drop sports, I have to focus on my studies, something that boys, sort of typically don't do as much. They will always take the time to go and play the game or go to training.
I definitely think it's changing, but I think there's a job of work to be done to keep that moving in the right direction. Like I would have noticed even when I was younger, like let's just say in my friends, I'm sure you're in loads of WhatsApp groups with girls as well. And like of my groups, there's a good few of them who don't play any team sport. Now they're very active and they do park runs and they go to the gym, but they wouldn't class themselves as sporty. And I'd be saying to them, girls, that is sporty. Like getting out and doing a 5K run, I would consider that sporty. But they, because they didn't play team sport, would have been like, oh, I wasn't into sport at all. And then by the extension of that, they wouldn't go and watch girls' sports teams play because they just weren't into it. Whereas I think there's no upper age limit on that now. The big difference that I have noticed is before, if you were in secondary school and you were at the ages of between 16 and then let's say your first couple of years in college, if you're not the best player, there wasn't a team for you. And that was the big difference for girls.
That's a great
because
point.
The elite always continued. Whereas I think now the biggest difference that I've noticed is even like my local club up here is Kilmacud Crokes, and they've got a senior 1 team, a senior 2 team, then there's a senior 3, 4 and 5 teams, then they've got junior teams, they've got intermediate teams. And it seems to me
there's
like
a place for me there, so
yeah, but there is, because there are now, like, even let's say there's Gaelic for mothers and others, so people who've never played before can suddenly play. So I think now if kids are seeing that, that's where the difference is.
It's that, and you're so right, because it's not about, as you say, being the best. There's the friendship, there's the camaraderie, there's the nights out, there's even the discipline. It doesn't matter if you're on the bench some of the time. It's just all, I totally regret when I was going to school, it possibly would have been like, the best kind of played, and I just didn't continue with any team sport. And like, it's something I really regret, and it's something that I really trying to share with, nieces and my daughter and that kind of thing, just to get involved and make those friends for life.
It's something that I say to parents all the time, because I get a lot of letters, I get a lot of emails from people, parents stop me and they say, how do I get my kids to play? And by the way, this is not an issue that's exclusive to girls either, because, I do see it with boys sometimes too. The key is, you have to find your own thing. And sometimes it takes people longer. Like, I have an older sister and I have a younger brother. My younger brother was a motorcycle champion in Ireland, but it took him until he was in his 20s to find that sport. He had his whole teenage life following me and my sister, who were both very successful athletes, and he found it really difficult. And sometimes with parents, it's just about persevering and saying, look, even if your kid is on the line and they don't, they're not getting any enjoyment out of that, find them something else, because they're going to come to something that they enjoy. Because if you can just even get the social aspect of it, and as you say, the nights out, the crack, all that. Like, I'm still playing basketball in a league that's much less competitive than what I would have played. But what I love about it is that it's my social outlet. I can go and get my physical burst, but also the crack that I have with the girls afterwards is irreplaceable in my life. It really is.
And actually, I was gonna ask you about that. You were telling me you play basketball 2 nights a week, and obviously, Jacqui, you're Cork, and your husband is a Limerick man. So, and you live in Dublin, so you haven't got, granny and granddad or an auntie or anyone to fall back on. But you still make your 2 night. You make the time for your basketball at an expense. You telling me you've got a babysitter, and lots of your friends think you're crackers. I'm sure it'd be way easier for you just to not go at all. But as you say, it's the benefit of it. And I think lots of women, particularly more so than men, think, oh God, no, the house is going to fall apart if I go out now again after work or whatever, which is crazy, isn't it?
But you see, that's
mindset.
The way we are. It's a legacy thing, because it's a total mindset. This is the way we were led to believe that this is what women do, because our mothers did it, our grandmothers did it, and that's the way it was. I think for me, there was definitely a point in my life where, let's say, my children are, Luke is 6 and Lily is 3. And those intervening years between the two of them, I didn't do enough for myself. I stopped playing sport, and I stopped making the time for myself. And I found that I was putting on weight. I wasn't as happy in myself. I just wasn't getting and look, life has to change when you have children. I completely accept that. You can't be the exact same person that you were before you had children. But I do think what you can do is you can find a balance. And I think that's what we have now, where, like you rightly say, we get a babysitter.
Because your husband plays rugby, doesn't he?
He plays 2 nights a week as well. And so for both of us to go training on those nights on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have to pay a babysitter. But to me, that's €25 that is paying for the happiness for me to go. So if I didn't do that, I'd be miserable. And okay, I might have more money in my back pocket, but we both need, I feel like when we both go to bed that night, we have both really enjoyed ourselves. We're in a happier place. It makes us better parents because we're happier. We have more energy for the kids. And overall for us, that's the balance. And also what I love about it is that our kids see mommy and daddy going out the door to play sport. And it means then that for both of them, they recognize that effort is equal. And that's what you need to teach them, that if mommy, during the 20 by 20 campaign, I posted a picture on my social media of me holding my kids after we won the cup. And my husband had won the cup the previous week. And I put the 2 pictures side by side. And I was like, it's important to teach our kids that mommies and daddies can both win cups, and it was just, that was important for us.
And of course, Jacqui, the pandemic would have turned your professional life upside down. I mean, overnight, live sports just evaporated. How was all that, and how back to normal are things now?
Thankfully, we are getting slightly back to normal. It was a bit crazy. Like I had days there where, because of the nature of the beast, where I work in the newsroom during the week, a lot of our desk actually got reassigned to news. So there was only a couple of us stayed in sport. And so initially we kind of stayed doing sports bulletins, but it kind of got to the point where they were going, now let's go over to Jacqui for the sport. And I'd pretty much be going, how are you lads? Still no sport, back to you, you know? And so it kind of got to the point where we were like, right, we can't continue doing this. So we started doing kind of news packages and stuff from home, but like it's very difficult to do that. Like, you know, you've children, you know what it's like, you know, when they're at home and they're running in and out, mom, I need this or whatever, and you're there trying to do a news report and it's like Jacqui Hurley, RTE News, mom, you know, and you just you can't do that. You're trying to record things and it didn't work for us. And the other thing was Shane was working at home, and I think the dynamic changes when there's both of you at home and you're trying to do this. And this is not, like you can imagine, like every household is in the same boat. So I think we all had a real shared sympathy around this, but like, you know, he'd have moments where he was like, the kids cannot come in, like this is a very serious meeting, and I'd be the same. So we just tried to balance it where one of us did the mornings, one of us did the afternoons. But I'm very grateful that it's kind of over now, because like, and maybe it's not, but like equally just for us to have some sense of normality where we can all go to work. The kids going to school last week was a big one. Like Lily started Montessori, and just the feeling of being able to get her out the door and the relief of knowing that she was actually able to do it. Because there was a worry there that we had where maybe she wasn't going to be able to go. So it's been lovely for them.
Did she get on okay? Did you do okay?
We had a bit of a teary start now, I won't lie. It wasn't easy because like she's never been in creche before. So she's had a lot of mummy and daddy as well for the last 6 months. And I was really kind of anxious about it. But like every parent, you know they're going to be fine. You walk them to the door and you hope that's okay. But as I was walking away, she was bawling and she was like, I want my mommy. And then mommy was getting a bit teary. So I had to leave. But in fairness, my 6-year-old son Luke was with me and he was like, Mom, you know she's going to be okay. And I was like, thank you, Luke, for saying that, you know. So, and then in fairness, I went off for a coffee with him and the two of us sat and we had a lovely morning together as well. So it was just, you know, it's nice to do those things. And she's grand, she's loving it. She came out of Montessori that afternoon and she was like, there was no crying, you know. And I was like, well, that's great. So thankfully it's all worked out.
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you, but you kind of answered it personally, how the lockdown went for you. How long were you away from West Cork, or how was, you were telling me that was the longest stretch you've ever had away from West Cork?
I would normally be down home at least once a month, at least. Just, you know, you want to go down and see mum and dad, my friends and all that kind of thing. And I'd say it was January was the last time we were home before the pandemic. And then we didn't get home until whenever the lockdown opened. Was it like 29th of June or start of July, whatever it was. Like, so like months, you know, like my parents had ripped their house apart. By the time I got home, there was walls gone down and everything. I was like, geez, lads, I hardly recognize the place. But, you know, it's weird because you really, like, I feel like when I drive home to Cork, and Cork people who live away will recognize this feeling. When I drive through the tunnel, I can suddenly breathe again. It's just like when you're home, there's something about the Cork air. I don't know what it is, but it's just, I'm at peace when I'm in Cork. I love it. I would live there, except that my job brought me to Dublin, but I love Cork. And so just getting down there and just getting to hang out with my friends and, you know, it was really, really lovely just to get back. And it kind of made me appreciate it all the more.
Exactly. What was the first thing you did when you went home?
I went to my mum and dad's house and they have a decking out the front, which is kind of like my happy place. It kind of looks out over the mountains in Ballinhassing, and myself and my mum sat out and had a glass of wine. And like that now, it was very emotional actually, because, you know, like my family have had tragedy in our lives as well, with my brother dying a few years ago. And, you know, I think then when your mom and dad don't get to see you, my sister lives in England. So, you know, they were kind of even further removed from their children. So it took a lot out of them. So I think they really appreciated when we came back down, and the kids obviously give them such joy as well. So just being able to sit out there on the deck and just, we all got through it, and that we were all kind of there together was a lovely moment. It really was, you know.
That's very moving. And I guess so, just back to the book, it's on shelves, I guess, in all good bookshops, is it right now?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And
How's it going?
it's great. And it's so exciting to see it out there because, when something that you've worked hard on hits the shelves, you don't really know. What you can't control is how people feel about it. You know
Yeah.
how you feel about it. But the most overwhelming thing to me is the reaction that I've gotten. I knew that the athletes liked it because they were such a part of the process. It was so collaborative with them. And I knew the illustrators had worked really hard on getting all the drawings spot on, which they're amazing. Like they really
Oh,
are.
I mean, I've seen the book. Yeah, it's fabulous.
Oh, to be honest, having their support and knowing that the athletes and the illustrators were happy about it, I knew that it was going to be successful because of that. But it's just been so overwhelming to see on social media just how powerful it is. Like I have gotten, I would say, already over 100 messages, and the book is only out a very short while. I've got over 100 messages on social media in the last 5 days from people being like, oh my God, I read this to my children and thank you so much for writing this book. And messages like that, you'd see some of the posts on social media and it would genuinely move you because you're kind of thinking, if this even has a small impact on those children's lives, then you'll be really glad that you did it.
Yeah.
So I'm just
brilliant.
so glad that we persevered with it because it wasn't easy either, trying to do a book in a pandemic. You've got 25 athletes you're trying to contact. I had asked 5 illustrators to work on the book. Normally people just get one illustrator and do the book, but I really wanted this book to showcase female talent in Ireland, not just the sports people, but the illustrators as well. So there are 5 female illustrators who all agreed to work together. So you're trying to communicate with them. And
yeah.
So there was a lot of moving
logistics,
parts, but it was amazing. Yeah, amazing getting it together.
Oh no, take a bow. It's fabulous. I'm recommending it to everybody. And actually, I'm going to backtrack now. I meant to ask you this question earlier, and it's out of curiosity, if nothing else. And tell me, how did you get started on your broadcasting career? You started on radio, didn't you?
Yeah, so I did a media and communications degree in college in Limerick, and then I went on an internship to America when I was in my 3rd year. So when I came back, I had done a bit of radio in America, and so I applied for a job in Live 95 in Limerick. And I started there kind of working in the shadow crew. And like I often say to people, I still don't know how I have a job because there are multiple times that I definitely should have been fired because I used to drive around in those Jeeps going around doing like traffic reports and that kind of thing. And one week I accidentally put petrol into a diesel Jeep, which obviously, as people know, destroys the engine. So probably should have got fired for that. And then about 2.5 weeks later, I used to drive with, do you know Muireann O'Connell that does the 6 o'clock show on Virgin Media? So the 2 of us used to drive the Jeeps together.
That was good fun, I'd say.
Oh my God, sure. Listen, the 2 of us did wreck now around Limerick. But we used to pull up the Jeeps at the top of the hill on Henry Street at the start of the day and we'd kind of plan our route together. And so I had stopped my Jeep slightly in front of hers and I was just hopping out of the Jeep, a gorgeous summer's day, and I was just jogging back to her and I was saying, where are we going to go? And I could see her face going, oh my God. And she was there pointing at me and I was like, what are you talking about? And I turned around and there was my Jeep flying down Henry Street, which is a steep hill in Limerick, barreling down the street. And I was like, oh Jesus, it's going to kill someone or whatever. Thankfully, it stopped because it crashed into a row of parked cars on the road. And so I was like, oh grand, Henry Street Garda station is down there. I'll just run down and I'll tell the guards. So it just happened that it was outside the Garda station. So I ran in and I said, geez, lads, I'm really sorry, but the Jeep, there was a problem with the handbrake. It didn't go up properly. And so I said, look, there's a bit of a problem with the handbrake in that Jeep and it's after barreling down the road into the cars. So I just need to identify who owns the cars. And the guard says, don't worry, love, I know who owns those cars. And I was like, who? And he goes, they're unmarked Garda cars. Oh, shit.
Oh my God! I think you probably got enough for a second book on all those stories, Jacqui.
It was a rough start, but thankfully I had a very, very sympathetic CEO who saw the bigger picture that there was a bit of talent there and he stuck with it. Thank God.
Well, thank God is right. We wouldn't be enjoying all your great broadcasts or your book. Oh, that is so funny. Thanks for making me laugh on this interview, and I really enjoyed our chat. And I'm going to thoroughly recommend the book to everyone and anyone. I read it and I really, really enjoyed it. And I just have to say congratulations once again. Thank you so much,
thanks
Jacqui.
So much.
And I'll talk to you again soon, hopefully. Thanks, Jacqui. Take care. Bye.
And so to this week's newspaper. Our lead story is about the red alert imposed on Baltimore Beach last weekend when several potentially deadly Portuguese man-o'-wars were spotted on the shore and floating on the water's surface. We also have an update on the serious situation with the finances at Cork Airport and the Taoiseach's visit to Clonakilty last week to announce a major jobs expansion at FinTech Global Shares. On page 3, we have a wonderful story about a mystery involving a trophy which was found in a charity shop in Calekill. The trophy was presented for a Channel swim in 1960, and while the new owner has tracked down the swimmer in the UK, he'd love to find out how it got to Calekill. Inside, we have features on a new book on Beara's maritime history, a very unsettling story about a Courtmacsherry woman's experience of COVID, and it's a year since Skibbereen's SOS campaign was successful in its bid to block a plastics factory in the town. They have an unspent war chest which they're now offering to the best sustainable project ideas for Skibbereen. We also have our usual columnists, business, farming and motoring pages, and RTE's Jacqui Hurley is also featured in this week's Community and Life section. We also have Emma Connolly's COVID diary continuing, and our usual local notes pages are packed with news from your local area, and our super sports section, as always, is also inside. So don't forget, if you can't get to the shops, you can subscribe online by going to thesouthernstarTV and clicking on the e-paper tab, or call the office at 028 212 00 for a postal copy to be sent out to you. And now for this week's musical treat. Ballinascarthy-based composer-performer Emily Magner Hurley is launching her debut album called Airs and Graces as part of this year's Culture Night. Emily is an accomplished musician and a former composer-in-residence at the International Choral Festival. Some of her original work was performed at last year's Culture Night. Her album was launched virtually and streamed live from Jeffers Pianos in Bandon. All 17 piano pieces are original compositions, a fusion of classical and traditional Irish music. This gorgeous piece of music is called Kyo an Knuck. For more, see Emily Magner Hurley Music on YouTube. Thank you for listening to the Southern Star Coronavirus Podcast. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our podcast, which is available now on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Acast, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.